What's up everybody, and welcome back to the Lethal Games channel. Today we're taking a look at Dungeons 3 developed by Realmforge Studios. I'm a pretty big fan of the simulation genre, and when I first saw this game it really caught my eye. On the surface it looks similar to something like Warcraft 3, a real-time strategy game. And it does have RTS elements, but it leans a lot more towards the simulation and management side of things. The question is, how well does the game execute these genres together? Let's find out. The first character you meet in-game is the narrator. Now, in most games, narrators aren't technically characters, but I think you'll agree with me that this is certainly the case here. If you've ever played Bastion, you'll be familiar with the storyteller in that game. He practically provides play-by-play commentary on everything the player does. Though the one in Dungeons 3 doesn't go quite that far, the narrator is very involved with his explanations, his jokes, and even banters with actual in-game characters. Here, just have a listen.
We can't stay here. That thing has to be destroyed. After analyzing it briefly, I've discovered a great weakness.
Throw something through the 2-meter-wide cooling vent to destroy the reactor.
What? Nonsense! The thing is standing right there, so we can smash it to pieces.
Oh, why did I expect sophisticated tactics when I'm hanging around with bloodthirsty, not exactly intelligent, evil creatures?
He plays a huge role in setting the tone of the game, which actually encroaches into the territory of satire. There's plenty of references to game mechanics and pop culture, from Star Wars to Warcraft, from Lord of the Rings to even breaking the fourth wall and talking about the previous games in the Dungeons franchise. And while we're on the topic of breaking the fourth wall, they don't exactly shy away from it. The narrator will comment on cutscenes, generic gaming character tropes, and even has unique dialogue to welcome you back to the game when you launched at different hours of the day. And these interactions aren't just limited to dialogue either. There are times when the narrator will actually interfere with gameplay, like summoning mobs out of spite or interrupting entire cutscenes. These are clearly scripted, of course, but enjoyable nonetheless. So what exactly is the story that the narrator is trying to tell? Basically, you are the absolute evil, and after conquering the lands in the previous dungeon games, you set out to a new continent to do the very same. And that's pretty much the main premise of the game. You're evil and you're just trying to destroy everything that represents good. You're not going to find a deep story or intricate plot here. Instead, you're presented with a simple goal, and as they say, it's all about the journey. Your road to conquering everything good is filled with stereotypes of the fantasy genre and heroic characters and just plain conquest. You are promised a simulation and management game with some RTS sprinkled in. So how exactly is this implemented? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that maps are split into the overworld and the underworld. While the underworld is your domain, in each mission you'll need to build up your forces in your dungeon and conquer the overworld. Of course, things aren't always straightforward and easy. Periodically, waves of valiant heroes will enter your dungeon and try to destroy your dungeon heart. If that happens, you lose the mission. During my playthrough, that's never really happened to me, and at least on normal difficulty, these waves are easily dealt with. The main gameplay loop begins at your dungeon heart with 5 of your workers, or as they're called, Little Snots. How you build your dungeon is completely up to you, but you'll need to start by digging out paths and zoning out rooms. Rather than just placing buildings like in a traditional RTS game, you assign tiles to a specific room type and your workers will automatically build out the room and place structures for you. Though there are some specialized structures that you'll have to place manually as well. Major gold deposits are scattered throughout the dungeon, and though these are finite, there's also a diamond deposit located somewhere deeper underground that can be harvested indefinitely. It is kind of annoying that you have to use up a worker or two to dig around your dungeon just to look for these resources, especially when gold deposits run out rather quickly. It's actually really important to try and find that diamond deposit because gold can be a hard limiting factor on your army, which I'll explain in just a bit. Your other two main resource types are mana, used for casting your spells and reviving demons, and evilness, which is gained through capturing certain points in the world, and these are used for researching your upgrades. Now, as for unit production and management, there's actually quite a lot to it. There's 3 major types of units: the Horde, the Demon, and the Undead. I won't be going into detail about each one as I mainly want to talk about how to manage units in general. Whichever unit type you choose to produce, you're gonna need to dig up some space for their home base. The Horde lives in a hideout, the Demons in the Vortex, and the Undead in the Graveyard. These rooms aren't just for show, and when your units are back at base, they'll automatically return to these places to heal and rest. When Undead units are killed in battle, they'll regenerate themselves in the Graveyard. Similarly, Demons will automatically be resummoned in the Vortex, provided you have enough mana for the process. Now, the reason I consider Dungeons 3 a simulation and management game first is because of everything that's required to take care of your minions. In a traditional RTS game, the only things you really need for units are some sort of food or supply, an upfront cost to produce the unit, and the time to train the units. In Dungeons 3, units do still take up a population supply, and they also have upfront costs, but they don't require any time to train. Instead, there are a plethora of other things they require. The first is food. Now, food is different from population. While population supply is a hard limit on how many units you can have, your units will also get hungry, and every so often, you'll need to feed them. And in order to do so, you'll need to produce a gobbler farm to make food. If a unit's hunger reaches 100%, they will refuse to fight for you and go on strike. Literally. Your minions aren't slaves, and they're here because, well, it's their job, and that means they expect to get paid. Beyond their upfront costs, you also need to pay them a salary every few minutes. Again, if you don't have the gold to pay for them, they'll stop working for you, and this is where the importance of gold comes in. Units will also get tired and need to rest. This means heading back to their rooms and relaxing. And these are just a few of their very basic needs, and there are more advanced things that you'll need to take care of later on as each unit levels up. These unit requirements actually have some very substantial impact on the gameplay. The first one you'll likely notice is that you can't just venture into the overworld indefinitely, because once in a while you'll need to return to base and let your units eat and rest. This actually slows down the game quite a bit and results in pretty long game times. Secondly, you'll also need to plan for these needs accordingly or face a roadblock in your ability to tech up and grow your army. For example, having a 4x4 room for your food production is absolutely acceptable in the beginning, but you'll need to expand substantially if you want to manage any sizable army. You'll also need to research and build things like a mana bath or a brewery if you want to level your units beyond a certain point. In terms of simulation and management gameplay, I found Dungeons 3 to be pretty fun, but there's something that has been really polarizing for me. The map is split into two portions, the over and the underworld, and for some reason, the developers decided to split the control schemes for the two as well. The Hand of Evil is essentially your mouse cursor, and you can use it to pick up your units and instantly throw them in any part of your dungeon or even slap them around if you like, but only in the underworld. There's a hotkey to instantly gather all of your units into your Hand of Evil, and you can easily send your entire army above ground anytime you like. It's a fantastic feature that saves time and basically allows you to teleport your army across the map. It's especially useful if there's multiple entrances to your dungeon, but the hand is far from perfect. Because of the differing needs and functions of each unit type, you often want to select certain groups of units and send them to do certain tasks. For example, demons and only demons interact with the Arcanium to generate mana, but there's no hotkey to select your demon units specifically. Instead, you're forced to select your entire army, drop all of them in the Arcanium, and just wait for your non-demon units to walk out on their own. The only real option is to create your own custom control groups manually for each unit type. This honestly wouldn't be that big of an issue if there was a way to drop all your units at once. Yeah, you heard me right. You can pick up all your units with a single button, but you can't drop them all at once. You're forced to drop them one by one by spamming your right mouse button. I can't for the life of me figure out why they chose to do this. It is the single most annoying thing in the game, and it really feels like an easy fix. While we're on the topic of weird control schemes, in the underworld, you cannot select a unit without picking them up. This means there's no way to control your units to fight underground, and the only thing you can do is to drop them at a location and watch them fight automatically. This seems like a huge oversight in my opinion. While you're above ground, you do get full control of your units, allowing you to micro them during combat, cast spells, and position them properly. Unit types are quite varied and have their own specialties. From the resurrecting undead to the tanky orcs and the charming succubi, there's a good number of units to let you create your own army composition. Most spells are auto-cast by default, and I rarely found the need to manually cast spells. And the last thing I'll touch upon is the gameplay style. I actually found the idea of having a management-based building game with RTS combat really fun, but if you're a hardcore RTS fan and come from games like Warcraft or Starcraft, you'll be disappointed in how straightforward and streamlined the RTS elements are. Like I mentioned before, this is a simulation and management game first. Because of this, the amount of units you typically need before you're strong enough to take on enemies is actually really low. At least through the campaign, I found hitting between 13 to 15 units will allow me to easily breeze through anything the AI could throw at me, and with a little micro, even fewer units than that. You only get to control a single hero type character, Thalia, and she's not exactly interesting in terms of combat design. She's a mage with a couple of spells that you could easily put on autocast and just attack moves with your entire army and easily crush your opponents. I never really had a need to control her either. Because there aren't any races or factions or anything of that nature, each game will play relatively the same way. Once you figure out your build order and an army composition that's effective, you'll be doing the same thing over and over again, and it does honestly get stale. Since the units are already split into 3 different categories, I think it would be an interesting idea to have them split into 3 different playable factions and flesh out their own unique playstyles. Though my review is mainly based on the single player campaign, there are other game modes. Skirmish mode contains a mighty boss hero that you need to build up your army to defeat. Survival mode has you defending against increasingly stronger waves of enemies, and endless mode is, well, endless. On top of those, there's also a multiplayer mode where you can duel against other players online. I haven't played these other modes extensively, so I won't comment on them, but I just wanted to let you know that they do exist. Though the issues with controls were a big annoyance for me, I still had a great time with the game. And the bottom line is that Dungeons 3 is genuinely a fun game. Issues are all things that can be easily fixed through a patch, and when that's sorted out, I think Realmforge Studios will have a very compelling game on their hands. I would definitely recommend this game to anyone who's into the simulation and management type genres, especially if you like games with a bit of humor to them. The cartoonish graphics may not appeal to everyone, but it might also bring some nostalgic feelings to the fans of Warcraft 3. With that said, if you're someone who's looking for a hardcore RTS game, this is not it, and you'll have better luck with StarCraft 2, which is still the gold standard for RTS games today, and has recently gone free to play. As of the upload date of this video, Dungeons 3 is currently 35% off on Steam for their autumn sale, so if you're interested, now's a great time to grab it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and if you liked the video, hit that thumbs up and subscribe button. I've got plenty more gaming content coming your way, so make sure you don't miss out. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter for channel updates, gaming news, and sweet deals. That's all from me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.